Wow, I totally jinxed this situation. I said it on yesterday's show, and then I said it again this morning that things were awfully quiet with Cormani McClain. Not anymore.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, your host. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, contributor to allhurricanes.com. And thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen every day. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So, I said it on our previous couple of episodes that things were really quiet with the Cormani McClain situation, and that quiet is probably good for Miami, right? Because he's a Miami commit. So if we're not hearing noise for other schools, that's a good thing for Miami. The noise is back. We're hearing noise now. So we talked about it on this morning's episode via some great reporting by Gaby Urrutia from Inside the U, that there was a contingent of Miami coaches that were going to go to Lakeland to visit Cormani McClain at Lakeland High today. So apparently that visit didn't happen, and it didn't happen because McClain wasn't going to be there. And he's apparently on a mystery official visit somewhere. That official visit is not to Miami, and reports out of Tuscaloosa are saying he's not headed to Tuscaloosa. So, process of elimination, everybody's assuming Cormani McClain is headed to Boulder, Colorado to see Coach Prime. Let's bring in Locked On Network recruiting expert. This has kept us all busy. Between Cormani McClain and Jaden Rashada, we've been very busy in recent weeks. John Garcia Jr. John, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Apparently not as well as those in that side of the business, because it's been an extended conversation with those two in particular. And look, I'm curious, Donno, you're a representative of the Miami fan. Do you not fear is not the right word. Would you rather him visit Boulder, Colorado, or Tuscaloosa with Nick Saban if you're looking at, okay, he's going to do some due diligence here and go check out another school? Right. Who would you rather it be? Because to me, this is a good news scenario for Miami relative to Nick Saban.
Yeah, I agree. I would rather it be Colorado. It's like a fun story. It's like, wow, Colorado, they've been down really hard in recent years. And then Deion Sanders, he's trying to do what he did last year with Travis Hunter, whereas like Nick Saban always wins, right? So let's let some other people have some dubs here. I would rather it be Colorado. And John, if he is indeed visiting Colorado, and that's not confirmed, that's just our assumption, because if he's headed somewhere and it's not Tuscaloosa, and it doesn't seem like there's much NIL money flowing in Gainesville these days, so it's probably not Gainesville. We think he's headed to Colorado. Now, if Miami fans who, they've been kind of held hostage by this situation, I'm not going to blame Cormani or anybody else for it, but the situation, it's held Miami fans hostage. But I think it's almost reaching a point where in recent weeks, ever since he didn't sign during the early signing period, a lot of Miami fans are like, you know what? Still have an awesome class, still have some awesome corners coming in. If he doesn't come in, it's not the end of the world. They still got an awesome class, even without Cormani McClain. But the idea of him possibly visiting Colorado, or at least visiting somewhere this weekend, that's got to tell me, I don't know what my confidence level was before, but I'm at like 10% or less now that he ends up signing with Miami. So I think the ship is sailing away.
It could be. But look, Cormani moves like this. There's not a lot of on-the-record conversations. Even when we saw him at Under Armour all those days, yeah, he was throwing up the U, and he told me to my face, yes, consider me a Miami commitment. But that was kind of it, right? There was no additional details. But let me say, from what I know behind the scenes with him and at Lakeland High School, et cetera, this is not a Jaden Rashada adjacent conversation. That's no disrespect to Jaden, who I think has some folks around him that are making his life a little bit tougher. But this is not in that same vein, if that makes sense. So this is a different situation that he is navigating through. And simultaneously now, because he's unsigned, naturally, when you're the number one corner in the country, arguably the number one player in the state of Florida, you're going to have folks reach out. Deion had already done it on Instagram. publicly, which, who knows if that's legal or not at the time. Not that he cares,
Right.
but look, clearly there was a lot of interest from Deion, who's going to hit the ground running at Colorado. They've already made huge splashes in recruiting, and obviously he has made bigger splashes in his own timeline. So yeah, Colorado would make sense. I think Alabama would make sense if he was looking for due diligence. But that's kind of where I start with the conversation, Alex. I think this could be due diligence. He's never visited Colorado. He didn't take that official visit to Alabama. So those two destinations would make the most sense this weekend. But plans get set, plans change. And originally Cormani was supposed to sign something, maybe a grant and aid on Sunday. That was the original plan. So depending on how this thing materializes over the weekend, it will draw plenty of attention. But for some reason, I still feel like Miami's in a position to potentially get him on campus during the summer months. There's nothing, again, concrete journalistically here.
Yeah.
There's nothing confirmed that says he is not enrolling at the University of Miami. If and when that changes, we'll make adjustments at that point. But until there is something tangible, it's hard to imagine him not doing so. And again, if Deion Sanders is interested and you're a corner, absolutely you're going to pick up the phone. But you got to visit. You got to see what it's like out there. He has been on the West Coast. He's been to Vegas, been to LA. He visited BYU at one point, and there was like a BYU contention that thought they were going to pull the stunner of the 2023 recruiting cycle. So this thing is going to be wide open until it isn't, because Cormani himself isn't going to come out and validate any of the speculation, whether it's about the teams that are in the running or about the reasons he didn't sign in December in the first place. So really the best advice for Canes fans or Buffs fans or Roll Tide fans is just to sit tight and see what happens on February 1st, more so than this weekend or potentially January 15th when he was supposed to sit down and do something at a ceremony there at Lakeland High School. So fascinating as always, but I do think there's potentially another twist and turn before all this dust is settled.
Well, I want to remind you guys that when John Garcia joins us, he's brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, so if Miami were to lose out to Cormani McClain, I wouldn't lose a second of sleep over that if they're able to land Jaheim Singletary in the transfer portal. Now, John, I had a conversation. The conversation was on air and off air. We talked a lot about these two corners, Larry Bluestein and I, earlier today. And, Blue, who watches more high school games than anybody, he actually is a lot more sold on Jaheim Singletary than he is on Cormani McClain. Now, Singletary, he announced he's going to hit the portal. That's going to become official, I think, tomorrow, right? That he can officially hit the portal. He's going to have suitors all over the country. This is a former 5-star recruit. He's going to be wined and dined or, sweet-talked by all the big programs in the country. There is a Miami connection, a couple of them for him, though. Miami was one of the schools he considered before he ultimately chose Georgia. And his primary recruiter at Georgia, Jamil Adai, is now the defensive backs coach at Miami. So it at least makes me feel like Miami's got a shot here.
Not to mention, look, one of his last visits was out to Oregon in high school. So Mario Cristobal has hosted Jaheim Singletary personally at least one time. Look, I think, first of all, comparing the two is fascinating because they're very similar, right? Bigger, longer corners with a wide receiver background, ball skills, and confidence. All those boxes are checked with both of those guys. But Jaheim, a little bit taller, a little bit bigger, and obviously older, more experienced, with 4 years of eligibility still to his name. Yeah, you could make that one-to-one comparison, both, of course, from the state of Florida as well. Singletary's roots are up in Jacksonville. So that's a fascinating, trade-off in theory. But look, what I know from the schools involved with Jaheim, like you said, it's going to be a lot of schools, and this thing could move pretty quickly relative to visits. I've heard some outlandish offers relative to getting him on campus, which is just the nature of the portal, especially with the window closing on January 18th. But Miami's going to be in this thing regardless of Cormani McClain, regardless of the other circumstances, because as far as I know with Jaheim, this is about seeing the field. This is about playing time. This is about an opportunity. And obviously at Miami, there's a glaring need. And obviously the connections speak for themselves. You mentioned the guy. I mean, that's his guy. I mean, that was, Jaheim was committed to Ohio State. They had a coaching change and things really opened up. And it was like Florida versus Georgia for him. And Adai was a big reason why Georgia won out initially compared to then Dan Mullen's staff at UF. So I think that's huge in terms of continuity and what he's looking for. When you make a change like this, there is a finality to it. He wasn't in college in 2020. He doesn't get the COVID year. And this is it, right? It's like the one-time transfer rule. I had a coach tell me, and he'll be in the Power 5 next year. He said, look, you don't need to win the first recruitment. You need to win the second recruitment because then the kids can't move unless they want to sit out for a year, which no kid wants to do. And I know Jaheim personally, competitively, he ain't sitting out. So this is it for him. So there is this sense of finality that could maybe elongate the process and allow him to dig a little bit deeper in that search for opportunity and comfort. And Miami is going to provide both of those things in addition to familiarity. As you mentioned, Miami, independent of Cristobal, independent of Adai, was involved heavily for Singletary throughout his recruitment. And he's one of these guys that was on the radar very early as a high school freshman. So that was a long-standing relationship and a trip that he made from Jacksonville to Coral Gables. So Miami's going to be in this race today and probably throughout this transfer decision, but it will absolutely be hotly contested. I've heard Tennessee, I've heard Oklahoma, Florida, which was a big contender early on for him as well, all going to be involved in this thing. And that list is only going to grow once he actually can communicate with some of these programs.
I'm gonna pull a reverse Locked On Gators, and I'm gonna say, the Florida Gators are in the conversation there for Jaheim Singletary.
Yeah,
we'll see how this one plays out, and man, I hope he doesn't end up at Florida, only because that is going to be used against me. I will be air quote man.
It's going to be on the internet forever. So just embrace it.
There you go. All right, so we do have a couple of important transfer portal visitors coming in. I want to get John's take. Miami and everybody seems to be saying this, including John Ruiz is saying we're not done yet. We'll see what happens in the portal. But guys, I can tell you, good things happen when you eat some Built bars. Oh my goodness, guys, you've got to try Built's newest flavors. I love the mud pie puffs. I love the brownie batter puffs. I just had a brownie batter puff this morning. In fact, I'm going to be restocking on those soon. Cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, coconut brownie topper. Guys, not only are Built bars tasty, like you're going to feel like you're cheating on your diet. Everyone has these New Year's resolutions now. You're going to feel like you're cheating when you eat a Built bar because they taste just like candy bars, even better than candy bars. But no, they are revolutionizing nutrition as we know it with 100% real chocolate, 17 grams of protein, and shockingly low sugar and calories, just 130 calories. How do you think I have so much energy every day? It's Built bars and coffee. That's what drives me. I'm on the Mario Cristobal Cafecito plan, and I'm on practically an all Built bar diet is what we've been going with in recent days. And guys, here's the even better news. You can now buy Built bars at Walmart and at Sam's Club. And I know some of our listeners, like our guy Al, has been going to Sam's Club every couple days to restock on Built bars. I'm going to be buying some at Walmart later today. So if you live near a Walmart and a Sam's Club, head out there and buy some Built bars, guys. And you can still, of course, get our great deal online at Built.com. 15% off with our promo code LOCKEDON15. Take advantage of these great offers. I love me some Built bars. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. Gary Bryant Jr., very interesting. Had a very productive year at USC 2 years ago. This year, he decided to use his red shirt. So it seems like he had his mind made up. He wanted to go somewhere else very early in the season. This is a player Miami is pursuing, and Gary Bryant, at the time that I say this, he's on campus. He's visiting Miami today, Friday through Sunday. We know Miami is looking for help at outside receiver, and he can fill that role. If he ends up at Miami, he would be a starter probably, or at least competing for a starting job at the U. I think it would be a good situation for him to definitely get some playing time. What can you tell me, John, about Gary Bryant and how this process in the portal might play out for him?
Look, this is a calculated move, as you mentioned. He elected to redshirt at USC a long time ago in order to hit the portal and maximize the 2023 season. At that point, he'll be 3 years removed from high school and his camp. And look, in high school, this was a borderline 5-star guy. His camp has been talking draft since back then. So it's all about the buildup for him and his camp to 2023. So that has to be kind of like with Singletary, this combination of comfort, but also opportunity. And look, wide receiver, even if you throw in the high school ranks, has been one of the, not as elite position groups relative to most others, even since Mario Cristobal took over. So I think there is where there's an opportunity. Again, West Coast roots for Gary Bryant. He was a USC, Washington, Oregon type recruit coming out. Naturally, the Ducks were involved. So there is some continuity in that regard. But to me, as
oh no, John lost his equipment. Hold on, we're gonna reconnect with John. We got John back. John, did you say too much about Cormani McClain? Is everything okay? Did somebody go after you there?
Yeah, the Lakeland Dreadnought ship came through targeting my place here in Broward. Look, no, with Gary Bryant though, there is continuity with the coaching staff there at the U. So I do think that will be important. And that's part of the reason why he gets visit number one. And to me, that says a lot. When it's one thing to jump in the portal and be like, hey, let's see who jumps in and we'll make some visits thereafter. But when you've for months elected to sit out at a program at USC that looked like a playoff contender for much of the season, when you elect to sit out, you have time to plan this thing out. And the back channels can work how they work. So for Miami to be getting the first visit in general, to me, says a lot about their research from the Bryant camp and the opportunity available at Miami at that position. So all of that will, I'm sure, be strengthened and highlighted while he is here. But on the flip side, this is, again, a calculated camp and a calculated move. So they want to take as many visits as possible. I think Texas A&M is already in line for the second visit, similar opportunity there. So I do think it's going to be a bit more of a played out process unless everything aligns while he's in Coral Gables. I don't necessarily expect that. But again, Miami getting this first trip relative to that camp and those calculations does say a lot about the Bryant's interest in Miami. So the ball's in their court.
Now, I see a lot of, on a different player, a lot of age discrimination going on with Miami Hurricanes fans. Don't hate on Cam McCormick just because he's older than half the tight ends in the NFL. Like, stop hating on Cam. In fact, I look at his maturity, if nothing else, I look at that as a positive. So Cam McCormick he's an Oregon tight end. He's in the transfer portal. He's visiting Miami this weekend as well. He and Gary Bryant will both be on the visit this weekend. Now, McCormick, why I would be excited about the opportunity to bring him here. He's got a unique skill set from the other tight ends on Miami's roster because this guy grades out as an elite level run blocker. He knows Mario Cristobal well. In fact, he got to Oregon before Mario Cristobal even did, I'm pretty sure. So he knows Mario better than Mario knows himself. And he's visiting Miami this weekend. And the crazy thing, we were talking, John, before we started the show, that not only is Cam McCormick heading into his 8th year of eligibility, he's even been granted a 9th year if he decides to use it, right?
Yeah, this is certainly unprecedented in terms of talking about portal recruiting. This is a great story in and of itself because McCormick is bouncing back from an Achilles. I mean, that's no small deal. So the NCAA felt that sympathy for him and gave him 2 extra years just because. So now it's just a matter of where he's going to end up. And the moment he hit the portal, seemingly the other day, there was already Miami buzz. That's a great sign, especially given the connections that you just laid out, not only with Cristobal, but with some assistant coaches on top of that. And then the fit makes a ton of sense, right? There was a clear emphasis for Mario and this staff to hit the tight end position hard. They did so with a lot of pass first guys. in the end of the 22 cycle with Jaleel Skinner, and obviously in 23 having 3 guys committed at one point. One of them flipped to South Carolina, but the promise of bringing in volume was always a part of that plan. And in theory, it makes even more sense to go after McCormick based on the skill set, as you mentioned. He's physically mature, mentally mature. We could probably assume on top of it, already has 2 degrees to his name. So bringing that type of maturity and continuity to what we think is going to be a pretty young team in 2023, I think is a really big deal in the locker room. And then on the field, as you mentioned, he will be in line. He will be able to both run and pass block, and he can still be serviceable as a pass catcher, which is more what we've seen from Miami tight ends over the last few years. But it's that physical element that Mario wants on this roster as an extension of the offensive line that really should be intriguing for both McCormick and Miami simultaneously. So this is one that is kind of the opposite to me of Gary Bryant and maybe Jaheim Singletary, and where I think this thing is going to move pretty quickly. And it wouldn't be a surprise if McCormick comes off the board sooner rather than later, and certainly sooner than those other 2.
Keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. I've got to ask our recruiting expert, John Garcia, about probably the top one of the top unsigned, top uncommitted players left. Could Miami pull off a miracle on National Signing Day? Keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. Guys, if you're looking for the best information, odds, stats, news, and analysis, you've got to head to BetOnline. BetOnline is your #1 source. Get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season, basketball, hockey. We've got it all at BetOnline. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. I'm on the site every day, guys, so head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, John, I by the day, I'm obviously, I don't really have any optimism left for Miami landing Nyckoles Harbor, 5-star athlete. I have dreams about him at 6'5" with Olympic track speed, lining up wide receiver for Miami, but he's not going to be taking a visit to Miami, so it seems like the Hurricanes' chances are slim to none, probably closer to none. Where do you think Harbor ends up?
Look, Oregon's got a ton of buzz right now.
Yeah.
They're getting the last official visit and the only scheduled official visit in the month of January. It's that last weekend of January, right before the signing period opens up. But really, with Harbor, he didn't rule out visiting Miami. It just wasn't planned. And he admitted going to be tough, right? Got the Oregon trip scheduled. He had the Under Armour game. I think he's in the Polynesian Bowl. He's got track starting this month. So really tough for him to make it to Miami logistically. But we'll see what happens February 1st. He's been kind of up and down relative to that date. Sometimes he's like, yep, I'm coming off the board that day. And then other times he's like, well, if I'm not ready, I'm not ready. So I think that could be a bit of a silver lining and puncher's chance situation for Miami, because you got to get the visit. I think with a lot of kids, especially in the portal, the visits don't hit as hard, but Nyckoles is extremely ambitious with what he wants, and he wants to meet with all the people in that path, not just the football coaches, not just the track coaches, but the pre-med professors and advisors. This kid wants to be a surgeon, so he's very stout on that front as well, and you can't get all of that without getting down to campus, and he's never been to Miami. So it's very simple from the Miami perspective. You get him on campus, game on, and if you don't, you're probably going to miss him. So if he signs February 1st, I would think Oregon, South Carolina, probably the 2 favorites. Michigan is right there, but the Harbaugh rumors, I think, are going to be tough from a timing perspective there. Maryland's the home state school that I think is a bit of a courtesy, no disrespect to Mike Loxley and company. But if it extends and or a visit to Miami materializes, it really is game on, because he's a kid that he really seemed undecided at the Under Armour game. He very much didn't want to isolate his conversation to even a handful of schools, never put out a top group, anything like that. Georgia was involved at one point. This thing has been all over the place for a long time. So there was a sense of a lack of completion for him. So that's why I think this Oregon opportunity is really big. They can go from theoretically 4th or 5th all the way to 1st, in my opinion. And he's already run track out there. So he already has commented on he even commented on the air that you breathe out there in Eugene relative to some other places. He's from Maryland, so he's like,
you hear that, Miami? Everyone in Miami just stop smoking for like a week. Just stop smoking. Tell them to come down here and visit. Let's clean up the air a little bit. And if you've got like a gas guzzling car, just keep it in the garage for a week. All right.
Yeah. Good luck with that down here. But yeah, if you get a visit, we'll see. But if not, I think the Ducks could swoop in here and be a nice late spot. And then the way they've been recruiting lately, both on the field or in recruiting and the portal, they shouldn't be counted out for any recruit because they've been swinging big and hitting big throughout this 23 cycle.
Oh, it's well said. And everyone, make sure you follow John at John Garcia _Jr. on Twitter. John, I can't thank you enough, as always, for the time. And guys, make sure if you're a small business owner, hiring manager, you take advantage of LinkedIn Jobs, linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. John, thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time.
Sounds good, my friend. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, we'll talk to you again later on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.